Okay, seems like things are getting connected. Last week we had problems getting the sound to work. So if you are logging in, let me know that you can hear me. And bonus, if you can also see me. Oh, it says I'm on YouTube, but I'm having trouble with YouTube. So we're going to try and fix that. So if you're joining, you must be joining on YouTube. I'm trying to get it up on Facebook now. Fingers crossed. But if you have joined via YouTube, let me know if you can hear me. It appears to be working on Facebook now. So I'm gonna put that away. All right, let me know if you can hear me. Things should be working now. So as you come in, you can hear me. Let me know in the chat. Bonus if you can also see me. Yay, excellent. All right, we've got comments coming in. This is a good sign. Everything seems to be working now. When I first logged in, it was not connecting to Facebook, but I think it's all solved now. All right, you can see me, you can hear me. Excellent. We'll give everyone a minute or two to come in, get themselves sorted. I've got a few things on my list that I'm going to be talking about this evening, but if there's something in agility, some myth or question that you have, or something that you've gotten inconsistent advice or feedback on that you think needs to be more clear, I want to hear about it, because it can be something that I can talk about a little bit this evening, or it can take on its entire own episode if it strikes enough passion. So kind of like we did last week, I want to hear from you. What things in agility do you think need more clarity? So start thinking about those things, and I will start talking about the things that I have on my list, and we'll see where the conversation takes us. Okay. I would like to see more clarity, or maybe some more consistency across the board in agility when it comes to handling terminology. And that's, I think, just because every, like, and maybe we can talk about handling systems in general, some, standardization maybe across the board. Because I, having been in agility for a really long time and having studied under a lot of great agility handlers that all subscribe to their own system, or handling philosophy, it maybe has happened that each of those systems they have overlapping ideas, but because they don't want to be labeled as copycats or stealing things from other people, each system has essentially renamed their version of the same thing. And this is so confusing. I hate it. It's my goal is that I can explain things in a way that all of my students understand things, regardless of what terminology I use. But terminology is shorthand. So being able to say front cross is shorthand for rotating into your dog to cue a turn while crossing to the other side of their line to change guiding sides, right? How much longer would it take if every time I wanted to insert front cross, I had to say all those words? I can say all those words. I'd have to think about it more because I've been conditioned to just say front cross, just say rear cross, just say this turn, just say that turn. But when you have multiple names for the same behavior or the same cue, that it's going to slow things down, especially if you're learning from multiple people or trying to talk to different people about agility that are maybe not in the same training circles as you. So one thing, so that's kind of on my wish list, is that we could have some more standardized terminology about handling skills, because depending on who you're learning from, the names of your cues might be describing the handling that you're doing, that you, the handler, is doing, versus the names that I would say describe the pattern of obstacles may also be used as a handling technique. Or maybe the name of the cue that you're giving is actually a cue to use a specific verbal. So there's a lot of overlap and I think a lot of confusion. One of the things that was a big sticking point when One Mind Dogs kind of started becoming popular in the US was everyone was hung up on learning all the names of the moves and yada yada. And I don't want to learn all of those. And I can't remember those names. And I can't do this. And I can't do that. Well, I think there's the brilliance to having each technique named is for consistency. And it's consistency in that you only have one behavior or you only have one cue for one behavior, right? When you ask your dog to sit, you expect a sit, butt on the ground, feet and elbows off the ground, right? You expect a behavior. When you say sit, the dog understands, okay, I offer this behavior. When you say down, the dog understands, offer this behavior. So I think of the handling techniques in the exact same way. If you learn that this is a front cross, this is a false turn, this is a backside end, this is a blind cross, this is a rear cross, and even more into the last comment, this is a reverse wrap, this is a German turn, this is a whiskey cross. When you learn them that way, you are more consistent because it's one cue, one name, one label for one behavior. So I do think the value in dissecting and pulling apart every single potential cue combination and labeling it its own thing does produce more clarity in the long run. Does it produce a little bit more work on the back end? Maybe, but I think in the long run, you'll get there faster. So maybe that helps you if you do still look at the list of One Mind Dogs techniques and go, oh my gosh, that's so much to learn. Or if you think about location-specific marker cues, you're like, oh, I don't need those. Well, it's the same clarity that we can provide for our dogs. Like if the toy is coming from the ground versus the toy in our hand, the dog has to do two different behaviors to collect that reinforcement. So labeling them two different things makes more sense. It provides more clarity. So any other thoughts about providing clarity within a handling system? Okay, good. I'm glad that that's what you were going to say. And someone's thinking back to a time you told us how to handle a course by describing what we were to do and not using the names. And it was hard, wasn't it? I have done that in the past. Wow, that's a while ago now. I have done that in the past in group classes where I'm like, all right, you're not allowed to use labels. Tell me how you're going to handle this. You're not allowed to use shorthand. I want to hear you describe every movement. And it was so hard. And it took a lot longer. It took a lot longer than just using the shorthand for all of those movements, right? It's the same thing. We don't talk about teaching our dog to put their butt on the ground and keep their elbows up. We talk about teaching our dog to sit. And we all know when I say we're going to teach our dog to sit, we all know what that looks like in our heads. If I say, okay, we're going to learn how to do a front cross today, we all think of the same thing. But there are some techniques that have a different label depending on which handling system or philosophy that you are learning from. And that's what I would like to see change. If I could wave a magic wand, I would wave it so that no matter what philosophy that you subscribe to in handling, the terminology would be the same across the board. Because I think there are things like when I say Yako turn, you don't all see the same thing. When I say German turn, I don't believe that everyone sees the same thing. And I would like to change that for ease of communication. Okay. If you're just logging in, I have a list of things that I would like to see more clarity in and agility for the humans, for the dogs, for everyone. But if you have something specific, please drop it in the chats because I am more than willing to derail my list to talk about things on your list, or they're going to strike a nerve and I'll do a whole episode on them. All right. So if you have something that you want me to clear up, drop it in the comments. Okay, so disparity on chest orientation, punching the takeoff versus the rear cross switch. The first time I changed fundamentals teacher, she had me punching the takeoff to accentuate a turn. My dog read it as a rear cross and went the other way. So this is, I actually have this on my to-do list I've been avoiding it for no other reason than time. But this is a super interesting one, and it kind of connects to what I was just talking about. So I actually think even though rear cross is a really common handling technique, I feel like when I say rear cross, not everyone in this room in agility would visualize the exact same cue combination. So the short answer, I have done, it's a 2-part blog series. It's a blog on my website about rear cross problems. And I think you'll probably, and I analyzed a couple of videos where I made problems happen on purpose with one of my dogs. And she's real easy to affect with rear crosses, and she can confuse those things a lot. But basically dogs do read pressure into their line as a turning away cue. And the more sensitive to pressure your dog is, the more easily they are going to turn away. But that's not natural. That turning away has to be taught. And I believe that they learn that by with chronically late rear crosses, where the handler doesn't actually cue the rear cross until the dog is jumping. And so the dog learns that proximity to the line is what cues the turn. In my definition, a rear cross means that you are crossing the dog's line to cue the turn, not just moving into the dog's line, that you are physically crossing the dog's line to cue the turn. So check out that blog, and I think that will probably answer some of your questions. But I have another one that I would like to do, another video analysis series on changing the dog's lead on the flat versus like a tandem turn or a rear cross on the flat. There's another one where the words aren't matching up depending on where you learned it, versus a rear cross. Kimberly says, yes, it would make conversations with friends who train different philosophies so much easier. Exactly. Because when they, and I still see it all the time. Some, you know, when a student tells me their plan and they use labels, I see one plan. And a lot of times I go, that doesn't make sense to me in my head. Can you show me? Because what they show me is what makes sense. But the label that they applied to it doesn't track in my brain, in my terminology. So absolutely, it would totally help. So kind of, I think the next one we need to segue to is clarity in following the handling. And this maybe opens up a rabbit hole for just how we're conditioned to react to errors, and maybe we just need an overall better understanding of how dogs respond to our handling. Maybe I'm opening that door, but it is unfair to say your dog lacks obstacle focus if you are chronically late with your timing. Because what the dog will learn is that you react to handling, you react to them rather than planning proactive cues. So if your dog is heading towards an obstacle and you reactively call them off of the obstacle, that's not fair. They committed to the obstacle they thought that you wanted them to take, and then you call them off. And you might even get praised for it. Oh, nice save. Oh, that was so close. I can't believe you managed to save that, yada, yada, yada. That doesn't work long term. So we need to get clearer about understanding how our dogs react to our physical cues. I'm grabbing this question real quick. What does punching the takeoff mean? I'm not 100% sure that I know, but I think it's I've heard it referred to as angry arm. So like when you take a step towards the takeoff point with like a decel or a rhythm change, you actually like move your arm down towards the takeoff spot. So you're like punching towards the ground. That's what I'm imagining. But I don't know for sure. So I think we need to get really clear about, I can stop playing with these pens. I can. I probably can't because I need something in my hands, but getting clear about, oh, okay. Someone says, yes, that's right. Excellent. Nailed it. The history of I have lots of agility information. I have filtered it and I keep the most relevant stuff at the top, but things like that. Sometimes I can pull from the files. So, okay, back to handling. We have to be super, super clear about when the dog is following our handling and when they are not following our handling. And that, I think, is a trickle-down effect of what we were just talking about, is having a clear understanding of, oh, I just did X and I expected my dog to do X, but they did Y. And then when you review the video, you actually see that you did Y, and so did they, and they deserve a reward. Okay. Basically, what I'm trying to say is We need to be more open to rewarding dogs for going off course. And we need to be more open to adjusting our reinforcement strategy when they get a refusal. Okay, so we just need to be more clear about when the dog is following the handling. Okay, so we can't have it be both ways. I'm not explaining this well. I can tell. I don't feel like I'm explaining this well. We can't expect the dog to have good obstacle focus and call them off of things. That's the simple way to put it. Does that make sense? I'll move on. Okay. Oh, right. Reactions to drop bars. Let's get more clear about that, shall we? Reactions to drop bars. If you want, because I wanted to bring this up because it comes up a lot. What should I do when my dog drops a bar? And I feel like the answer should be, well, what do you do when your dog misses a weave pull entry? What do you do when your dog misses a contact? What do you do when your dog breaks their start line? What do you do when your dog goes off course? Why is jumping, why is knocking the bar any different than how you respond to those other things? I can kind of see your point. It's the dog's responsibility to keep the bar up. But isn't it also their responsibility to hit their contact, to hold their start line? Let's talk about responsibility. Do they actually have any? This is more of a philosophical question, of course, but I think we've been talking a lot about training values and things like that. And I think you should dive into what that means to you and based on your training values and your goals. What does dog's responsibility mean to you? Because it's not on the dog to know all these things. It's on the dog to do what they've been reinforced to do. Right? So I don't put a ton of responsibility on the dog because they're not acting independently on their own. They're doing what they're cued to do. So I think, however you want to react to any error, you can apply that same protocol to a dropped bar. What I want you to be aware of when you call attention to the dog dropping a bar, you also have to draw attention to the dog hitting the bar, ticking it. Because what the dog is in control of is this. They're not in control of that. They're not in control of the bar actually leaving the uprights. They're only in control of whether their foot hits the bar or not. You're right. Jumping effort and success is so easily influenced by poor handling versus weaves, contacts, tunnels. I mean, I think it's all influenced by poor handling or poor training. And I'm not advocating for one way or the other. I don't put much responsibility. I don't put responsibility in the sense of that they're planning their actions ahead of time. They're just responding to what they thought I wanted. So I don't necessarily react to bars falling. I make a note of it. I'm saying if you are the person that reacts to bars falling, I think it would be more fair if you also react to bars being ticked. I don't think it would be fair to draw attention to a dog dropping a bar if you weren't consistent in your handling. So it doesn't have to be consistently great. It doesn't have to be consistently perfect. It just needs to be consistent, and the dog can figure things out. But if you're all over the place, you're on time this week and the next week it's impossible to follow your handling, and the next week your timing is a little bit better. And so if there's inconsistency in the quality of your handling, I don't think it's fair. But if you're the same handler week after week after week after week after week, of course there should be some improvement, but you're not making dramatic changes back and forth, right? Then I think it's more fair to at least bring it into the equation if your values and training philosophy allows you to. Bars ticked. I had an instructor that put bells on the bars so we could tell if the dog ticked the bar and could respond appropriately. If that's within your training values, that's okay. I have fear of fallout with that idea because if you react, the bell will eventually be the signal to the dog that you will react. And depending on how you're reacting, the fallout could be that anytime the dog hears the bell, you're going to get a negative response from the dog. And it could affect how your dog views jumping. So it's not something that I'm interested in doing, but obviously it's been done and it's been done successfully. And, you know, I'm just aware of the potential fallout from that. The same way that if when your dog hit the bell, hit the bar, hit the jump, the bell sounded off and you stopped and gave them a cookie, the bell would signify that they're going to get a cookie. But and this is an extreme example, but if you hear the bells and you turn around and go, that's not okay, you can't do that, blah, 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 whatever, right? Or you pick up the bar and tap it on the ground. The bell predicts that. And pretty soon the dog is either going to be like, depending on your dog's temperament, my dogs would all hear the bell and leave. They would just leave the training session if I picked up a pole and topped it on the ground. So you have to just be aware of, you have to have clarity surrounding what that means. Okay. I have a question. When a dog gets a refusal, what does that mean to you? What is that? When your dog runs by an obstacle or pulls off of an obstacle that you're trying to cue, what is your instinct? What do you think the problem is? What do you think went wrong in that situation? I'll give you a minute. And I can continue providing clarity around how I do react to knocked bars. I'm aware of bars ticked as well. And the first time my dog touches a bar, whether it falls or not, I'm going to finish that loop. I'm going to redo that loop, the exact same sequence. And then I'm going to give them another chance. If they tick it or knock it again, the dog is telling me they don't have the jumping skills to navigate that problem in that moment. So I'm going to break it apart and train that piece, or avoid it that day if I don't have time to train that piece. If they get it right on the second time, I don't have a problem and I keep going on. Okay, Y'all are answering my question. So the question was, what is the problem if your dog gets a refusal? I wasn't connected, inexperienced dog, try to build value for jumps in practice, no connection or poor handling. I say oops and don't allow continue. My handling error. A refusal to this person means that they didn't indicate the obstacle correctly. Probably inadequate training. If it is my fault, I do not let the dog know it was incorrect. Kimberly says handling error, more commitment training. Okay. You might not be wrong. So part 2 of this question is, if let's say that this is a training opportunity. You're in class, you're in a training situation, you're practicing. What's your next move? What do you do? While you answer, I'm going to say that you may not be wrong. I would like, and those of you are like, oh, is it if it's my fault, if it's their fault, how can you tell the dog in that moment that that refusal was their bad versus your bad? This is where we need clarity. Okay. In class, I would ask them again, to me, the dog is never wrong. Absolutely. Right. Like we can have these philosophical things about the dog is never wrong, blah, 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 blah. I think he knows how to jump, drop bars. Either he is tired or my info not well timed. Move the reinforcement, maybe stash reinforcement at the okay. All right. Okay. Excellent. You all are all on the right. You got good ideas about how to kind of solve these things. I would like to suggest that it doesn't matter whether it was your fault or their fault. They don't know. All that they know is that they ran by an obstacle and something happened. I would like my dogs to know that I don't really want that. I'm probably still going to reinforce them the previous repetition, but then I'm going to make sure that I set up the next repetition so that that doesn't happen again. I would like them to stay committed to the obstacles that they're on, even if I'm not perfect. Because I don't want them questioning, is this a time where I'm allowed to break commitment? Or is this a time I'm not allowed to break commitment? Keep committed, regardless of what I'm doing. So then very next repetition, they're getting a pre-placed reward. And I'm probably going to try the exact same handling again. This does assume that I'm not completely off my rocker, right? If the handling wasn't appropriate, we're not talking about the same thing. I'm talking about there was appropriate handling attempted. It was not 100% perfect, but I would like my dog to keep committed anyways, because I think that's more clear in the long run. Yeah, you guys are super smart. You're pulling from ideas, right? The either or training, things like that. You have the ideas. Take it one step further. Doesn't matter whether it was your fault or their fault. Okay? I want you to react to refusals the same way. It will be more clear that you stay committed to an obstacle no matter what your handler is doing, which I think is what I probably should have led with when I was trying to say stop calling your dogs off of obstacles, because you can't have it both ways. You can't have the dog have really good obstacle commitment and be able to call them off of things. So your cues do have to be consistent and proactive enough to make this work. Okay. All right, the last one I'm going to talk about. So if you have something else that you would like me to talk about, you have to put it in the chat. I would like there to be, and this all sound like a broken record, I would like there to be more clarity surrounding where reinforcement is available and when it's available in agility. In the typical group class setting, I do not, and I've been trying to, pre-pandemic, when I was teaching group classes and even seminars, I was slowly starting to try and really change this to kind of put a little bit more emphasis on when and where reinforcement will be available, because what I would like to change is you've got a course set up, maybe it's like 1 to 15, and I would ask, okay, where are you going to reward? And the handler's answer is, well, I'll just see how far I get. No, because one, that basically means you're going to stop and reward when something goes wrong. Or you're not going to reward. You're going to stop, reset, redo whatever you just did, and then maybe get the dog to reward. It's not clear. It's not good training. It's not, it has to be more, it has to be planned out and thought through. So if you are in a group class environment, if you are in a seminar environment, and you know you are not running the whole thing, you need to choose what your loop will be. So if it's one, if you know, if you're looking at this and you're like, okay, for where I am today as a handler and where my dog is at as a dog, and for us together as a team, I'm pretty sure I can get through 7. We can do that. That's within our skill set. So you're going to plan to reward at 7. Okay, that's easy enough. Here's the kicker. You need to get to number 7 no matter what. So if something goes a little sketchy at number 3, I want you to ignore it, and I want you to go all the way to 7 and reward your dog. 1, it's going to be way easier for you mentally to just stick to the plan. It's good practice for trialing, and you're going to have a better opportunity to reward while you and the dog are working together as a team, rather than rewarding when things got clunky. Okay? So I want you to be thinking about planning where the reward is going to come from and getting to that point no matter what. Because I would like there to be less of those apology cookies or screw up cookies, or, oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, you're a good dog, here's a cookie. I would like there to be more fluidity to the training than just running until a mistake happens. I don't tend to choose a certain number of obstacles. It's maybe not about the number of obstacles. Maybe it's about the number of techniques that you're having to do. Maybe it's more about, in the 12 obstacles, you had to do 4 front crosses. Maybe that's what it's about, that after the 4th front cross, you're going to reward, regardless of whether that took 6 obstacles or 12 obstacles to do. You can do it like that, but it actually doesn't matter to me how you choose. I would like there to never be, I'm just going to run and see what happens. Or I'm just going to run until the wheels fall off, and then I'm going to reward when the wheels fall off. That's so backwards to me. I struggle with what cues to use. How many are necessary? Is there a list? So this is a great question, because how many are necessary depends on what kinds of courses you are planning to run, and and the skills that you need your dog to have. So yes, you can curate your own list with the help of someone who knows the master list and can help narrow those things down. When I teach my handling classes, especially online, I teach the most common ones in the first class. But in the second class, I teach less common techniques that can replace more common techniques. And that way the students can kind of build their favorites. And they can kind of curate their list for their necessary techniques. Because while I know, so if we're talking about the One Mind Dogs list of 20 or something techniques, 30 or whatever, however many is, I use like 6 most of the time. I have my 6 favorites. And while I know the others and I practice the others on occasion, I know which ones that I'm going to use the most frequently. And those are the ones that I practice most often. So you suggest picking rewards after something that might not be too difficult. I'm suggesting that we pick sequences that are within our pay grade. I've talked about this a few times about how I actually don't think we should be training on courses that are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times harder than what we're actually going to be competing on, because it feels like we're not building the habits that we need to be building. So I would like to see that the sequences that we choose to run our dogs on are ones that we can reasonably handle with the tool set that we currently have. And so it's not, I'm not saying that it shouldn't challenge you, and I'm not saying that mistakes won't ever happen. I'm saying that if our strategy is to just run courses and stop when things do go wrong, I don't think we're building good habits. And I don't think we're building confident handlers, and I don't think we're building confident dogs either. Green dog, short sequences, high rewards. In most situations, yeah. In most situations. Ever had a monkey see, monkey do, dog doesn't think? I haven't. But doesn't mean it doesn't exist. How do you suggest we ask our trainers to allow us to reward where we think we should? Perhaps our trainers think we shouldn't reward where we do. So how I would go about it is I would flatly say, I don't think the dog and I have the skills needed for that section today. Is it okay with you if I reward here, and then we can either work on that section together, or I can skip that section tonight? But I know that as a team, we're not ready to tackle that challenge at speed. And I'm going to be a little bit blunt here and say, if your instructor is against you rewarding and advocating for your dog like that, it's maybe time for a new one. Maybe. I know that it's difficult to design a course that adequately challenges the entire group. But when someone tells me, when someone is brave enough to tell me I don't feel comfortable doing that, and then I don't honor that, I don't deserve that student. Hands down. If I've got a student that's trying to advocate for themselves and for their dog and for their learning, and I shut that door in their face, I deserve for them to leave. Someone says I mostly take privates because of that. Yeah, it can be difficult. It can be difficult. Okay. What else? What else do we want clarity surrounding in agility? We've talked about handling terminology. We've talked about choosing when and where and how reinforcement's going to be available. We've talked about reactions to mistakes. We've talked about reactions to, is the dog following the handling or not? So I'm going to take some more comments. How do you suggest we create the excitement of a trial in a private? You can't. I mean, it's a terrible answer, and I know you don't want to hear it, but you can't. You can't create the exact same excitement. You can create, I'm sorry, I know it wasn't the answer that you were wanting. Because, right, you can't create the noise. You can't create the other dogs. You can't create the other people. What you can replicate to some extent is pressure, right? And the pressure of the environment, right? We don't all train in these buildings that host trials with right? We can't always be doing that. But I did do an entire Facebook Live on ring prep without the ring. And so you can search the group for that episode. And there's also a blog post that the notes, I published the notes that Sheila made of the live. So there's content surrounding it, but the biggest thing that has helped Shrek, quite honestly, with like trial like distractions, is some serious Zen bowl. Here's another terminology thing: Zen bowl, or just dish work, period. Open dish, food is loaded, it can be anywhere, and he can hear me and listen and respond to cues and sequences and chains with the loaded bowl there. That to him is the exact same pressure of the people and the noise and the dogs. And it's not going to be that same with every dog, but I think for a lot of them, I pretty much know that if he can't do the things with a loaded food bowl nearby, he's not going to be able to do it with people in the room. When we are in a group, he's just like at a trial in which he's way more excited. So yeah, some dogs are feeding off of the other people in the group. And so you can create more excitement, more arousal by layering that in with your reinforcers. So for instance, Shrek is going to get more aroused chasing a Frisbee than he is chasing a piece of kibble, right? So when I'm practicing, I can layer in more excitement and things like that, but the pressure, it's not going to be the exact same type of excitement than it would be if his best friends are in the room. You're welcome for this discussion. I'm very green to agility, and I'm still trying to process all of the terminology in order to be able to then transfer that with nonverbal cues to my deaf dog. Once we're out of COVID, I'll then feel comfortable asking someone to video my sessions in class to learn from my body language. Yeah, it's you definitely have to video things so that you can watch your cues and see how the dog reacts and go, okay, why did they think that? And then you can continue to create a communication system that's just for you and the dog. I had a Sheltie a long time ago that was much faster in competition, just the excitement and everything about it just really turned him on, and he was just kind of so-so in practice. So I definitely get it. Okay. I think we can start to wrap this up a little bit. I'll give you guys a minute or two to drop in any last minute questions about things that I said today or things that are just popping up. Ooh, next week's Monday musing is I'm going to give you guys the secret sauce. You want the secret sauce to training? You want all the answers? You really want the secret sauce? Spoiler. It's called splitting. Splitting your behaviors is the secret sauce, and we're going to talk all about it next week. More creative ways to split behaviors. Everyone's laughing at me. I think you're asking about my handling classes. I have through FDSA, I have a handling series. It's of 3 classes. The first one is the handler mechanics class. And it's completely handler only, talking about these fluency and these cues and getting a little bit more familiar with the terminology. You can purchase it as a self-study class right now because it's a prerequisite into the second class in the series, which is Smooth Moves, and it's about adding the dog to all of that. So in the handler mechanics class, you developed some fluency within your own skills, and you kind of know what you're starting to do, and you've got a better idea of why dogs do what they do. And then in Smooth Moves, we teach the dog the skills that they need in order to have successful sequencing. So commitment, keeping commitment, and things like that. And then we start to build some sequences. So it is the blueprint in how I teach sequencing to new students and my own dogs. So and then the third class that will happen in August is just a continuation. So we're adding more techniques, advancing more skills, and things like that. I'm glad you all find it so helpful. I know that it's not a common approach to teaching agility. It's one of the things that I'm trying to change, is that we focus on teaching the skills to the handlers first. And I was quite lucky. How this was developed was I had, a student that I worked with privately, and I would show her something, and she would go, wait, how did you do that? And when I was asked that, it forced me to go, oh, I did this like this. And I could break down every handling technique into a series of movements. And then I could see that some of those movements were the same across the board. And so the handler mechanics class just gives the handlers the fluency in those core skills that you'll need regardless of what handling system that you subscribe to. It's how you'll move on the agility course. I promise. And it's based on how dogs will naturally respond to those physical movements anyways. So even if you end up doing a more verbal heavy system, your dog's not going to be mad at you for being more clear in your handling skills and in your physical cues. So that's how that was born. And so, like I said, you can purchase it for self-study, and you can grab the second in the series at bronze and maybe silver. I haven't looked if silver sold out or not. Excellent. Well, tell your friends they can sign up now, but it will not be available for purchase after June 15th. So it's available now, but it won't be available for self-study forever. So it's only available when the other classes are being registered for as well. All right. So next week we're talking about splitting, which We'll probably talk about splitting handler skills too, because that's exactly what the handler mechanics class is splitting those things apart for yourself, because it makes splitting really is what makes training go more smoothly, makes it go faster, makes your progress much easier. Okay, thanks for joining me tonight. Thanks for your insight and your questions and your comments, and I will see you all next week.